Epic adventures start in Laramie, Wyoming. Surround your family with alpine vistas and high plains legends. And take a front seat to see the real West. Pristine wilderness adventures and relaxing with the best that nature has to offer makes hospitality a way of life. Laramie, Wyoming. That's why.
Get that four-wheeling, senses reeling, natural feeling. It's that time of year again. Time to unplug and connect with the great outdoors. This fall, bring your 4x4 to Laramie, Wyoming. Or rent a 4x4 and spend your autumn in awe. Plan your trip at visitlaramie.org. Laramie, Wyoming. That's why.
Avenue, Laramie, Wyoming, for the following purpose. Original ordinance number 2009, amending chapter 10.08 of the Laramie Municipal Code related to the official traffic commission. All information relative to this matter is available for review at the City of Laramie City Clerk's Office at 406 Ivinson Avenue, Laramie, Wyoming. Anyone wishing to be heard should be present or may be represented by his or her agent at the meeting.
All right, thank you. If there's any that would like to speak regarding the amending the traffic commission, you're welcome to speak now. Brett Glass, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Good evening. I just wanted to say that I think this hearing is premature. I have no idea whether I'm in favor of this ordinance or not because the bylaws for the Traffic Commission have not been published. I think that you should defer consideration until after you've seen them. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Glass. Anyone else like to make comments for or against this item on the Traffic Commission? Nancy, I believe you're ready to speak. Nancy Sendelar?
Yes, Honorable Mayor and Council. I'm going to agree with Mr. Glass that I think the bylaws are a critical part of this ordinance and they need to be given 3 readings. And before you can approve the ordinance, you also need to approve the bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you also. Anyone else would like to make comments? Seeing no others, we'll close this public hearing, and I'd ask the city clerk if she would introduce the next public hearing. Read the notice, I mean.
Notice is hereby given that a public hearing of the Laramie City Council will be held Tuesday, November 17th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. City Hall Council Chambers, 406 Ivinson Avenue, Laramie, Wyoming, for the following purpose. Original ordinance number 2019, adding section 5.09.050 to the Laramie Municipal Code related to manufacturing and rectifying alcohol. All information relative to this matter is available for review at the City of Laramie City Clerk's office at 406 Ivinson Avenue, Laramie, Wyoming. Anyone wishing to be heard should be present or may be represented by his or her agent at the meeting.
Okay, thank you, City Clerk. Any that would like to make comments regarding this item, this is your opportunity. All right, seeing none, we'll close this public hearing also. And again, these items will come up on the regular agenda for those that want to make comments at that time. I don't believe we have any announcements, okay? But we do have staff recognition. I believe Brooks Webb is going to help us with the recognition of one of our staff members. Brooks, go ahead.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council. Rock star of the month is Chad Williams. Chad has been with the city for around 15 years. He started with the city in the solid waste division. After about a year and a half, he took a position as a utility maintenance worker. He currently works on the sewer collection crew. Most often, Chad can be found on the Vector truck, keeping the sewer lines clean and keeping things flowing. If the sewer line breaks in the middle of the night, it's negative 10 degrees out. Chad's one of the first guys there in the ditch trying to get things repaired. Chad is an extremely hard worker. He's always willing to lend a helping hand. Chad's battled some medical issues over the past couple of years, but I'll tell you what, even after he goes in for treatments and he's down and out, he still shows up to work day after day. Chad holds many licenses, including a wastewater treatment plant 1 license, wastewater collection 2 license, water distribution 2 license, and a commercial driver's license. Chad's wife also works for the city. She actually works in my office as an administrative assistant. Every time I've come in contact with Chad, he's always had a positive attitude, and he's always willing to talk to you and show you what he's doing. I've been out on sewer main breaks before that Chad's been on, and he's taken me and shown me exactly what they're doing and how they're doing it, and very helpful. Anyway, Chad is a very committed, hardworking guy, and I'm proud to say he works for the city and very proud to say he works for Public Works. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. All right. And as with so many of our staff, we are so grateful for all the hard work, dedication, and all that they do. So again, thank you for that recognition. Are there any disclosures by anyone on the City Council regarding any item on the consent or regular agenda that they would have a conflict of interest with? Okay, seeing none, then I will go back to the Vice Mayor, Pat Gabriel, to take us through the approval of the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. I would move that the consent agenda be approved and that each specific action on the consent agenda be approved as indicated.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded by Councilor Pierce. City Clerk, would you take us through roll call on the approval of the consent agenda?
Harrington.
Yes.
McKinney. Absent. O'Doherty.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Schuster.
Yes.
Stalder.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Okay, our consent agenda has been approved. Now we go to the regular agenda. First item is item number 11, Councilor Schuster.
Thank you very much. The title of this is Third Street Partners Preliminary Plat. I move to approve the Third Street Partners Preliminary Plat based on findings of facts and conclusions of laws and subject to all staff recommended conditions.
Is there a second?
I can second that, Mayor. Second.
Okay, the motion has been made. It's been seconded by Councilor Pierce. This will be introduced to us by Mr. Teeny, correct? Or go ahead.
Correct. Mayor and Council, good evening. The item before you is the Third Street Partners Preliminary Plat. This is a preliminary plat that creates 2 commercial lots for development within the city of Laramie. I will provide a little bit of background. The area in which the Third Street Partners Preliminary Plat is located is actually within the area that was recently considered by the City Council as part of the Poledna Addition. If you recall, during the preliminary and final plat process of the Poledna Addition, there was a lot that was located within the subdivision that was not owned by the development group that was doing what was called the Poledna Addition. Because of that, it was not included in the preliminary plat, as well as the design work and things like that that was part of the Poledna Addition. Following approval of the final plat of the Poledna Addition, the developer of the Poledna Addition was able to acquire the property that was left over, or kind of this remnant, and that has thus facilitated the process that you see here today, which is what's called the Third Street Partners Preliminary Plat, which will plat a lot that was kind of left out of that Poledna Addition and replat essentially the commercial lots that were located south of Bill Nye Avenue and east of 3rd Street. The area is zone B2. It's about 1.8 acres. It's creating 2 lots. Essentially, if it was to summarize it very briefly, you're taking a lot that was not platted and combining it with the area that was south of Bill Nye Avenue, and then reconfiguring the lots to be more, I would say, typical of what the development pattern would probably be, the expectation of development pattern in that area. This is a fairly unique project in terms of this doesn't happen very often, but this allows for the developer to plat the lots. This is just the preliminary plat process. As you note, as I note in the staff report, during the Poledna Addition, infrastructure requirements such as the development of Bill Nye Avenue, sidewalk improvements, as well as the installation of a traffic light, as well as traffic light agreement, was all approved with the Poledna Addition. None of that changes with the 3rd Street Partners, as all of that has already been platted, all the right-of-way has already been dedicated, everything has been done essentially with that in terms of infrastructure-wise. This preliminary plat, though, does, like I said, reconfigures the lots south of Bill Nye Avenue. I do want to kind of point out a few things just to help everyone remember with the Poledna Addition preliminary plat and final plat. We did, like I said, platted Bill Nye Avenue, addressed the traffic signal at Bill Nye and 3rd Street, as well as created the open space tracks that were located along the Spring Creek Channel, which is directly adjacent to this property in this preliminary plat. Aside from that, really, all the requirements of Laramie Municipal Code have been met with this preliminary plat. The applicant would still be required to complete the final plat process before selling lots and actually having this configuration be approved, but this is kind of that first step in the preliminary plat and final plat process. We do public notice, and we do posting of the site as we typically would for any subdivision. At this point, we've received no public comments related to the subdivision. And I think with that, you'll note some very basic conditions that are included in the within the staff report. Those do apply to this. I'm going to point out, though, you'll see it's a much pared down list. Main reason why is a lot of the things that we usually make comments on and condition plats on are related to things such as utilities, infrastructure, rights of way. Since all of those things have been addressed with the Paledna edition, really we have very few comments on this because it's mostly organizing the land within the space, not necessarily needing to address some of the major infrastructure components. Also note that is very atypical in terms of a project like this. When the final plat comes through, we will not need any type of subdivision agreement because during the Paledna edition final plat process, all the infrastructure and requirements associated with that were addressed and taken care of and financially secured through that process. Because of the no changes there, we don't need one with this. And so it's something I specifically put in here that it's very different than what you would normally see. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions. The applicant is also on the call, so he is available probably as well at some point.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Taney. Any questions for the applicant or for our staff? Yes, Councillor Stalder.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to hear from the applicant if all the staff's recommended conditions are something that they think they can do and all that seems reasonable and in order.
Honorable Mayor, Council, this is Dave Coffey, Coffey Engineering. I'm also a partner in the 3rd Street Partners project. We're satisfied with the review from the City of Laramie. This project has gone fairly smoothly, and we really appreciate the cooperation and the support from staff and council.
Thank you, Mr. Coffey. Anything else, Councillor Stalder?
Nope. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Coffey.
Any other questions? Are there any questions or comments from the general public for the city or for the applicant?
Mr. Mayor, my name's Laura Francis. I have a quick question about traffic over there with this new development.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I was curious to ask whoever has the most wisdom about this regarding the off-ramp that comes off of I-80 right next to that development area. It's already a notorious speed zone with the people coming in from the Fort Collins direction. And it's a really nasty left turn coming off the off-ramp there. And so I did hear mention of a stoplight. Could somebody go into detail about the potential for a stoplight there?
Mr. Taney?
Mayor and council, so this project, remember, is not quite near the actual interchange ramp on South 3rd Street. It's a little bit further north than the actual interchange area. The stoplight that was mentioned during the report and the presentation is going to be located at Bill Nye Avenue and 3rd Street, so it's a little bit further north. A couple of years ago, the city of Laramie as well as WYDOT did conduct a study that looked at potential changes to that area. WYDOT ultimately chose to go a different direction and really desired that area not include some of the a roundabout as well as a few other things that would have kind of addressed some of the traffic concerns in that area. You know, WYDOT really is going to probably be your best person to fully answer the question about operation levels and things like that related to that interchange, but that's kind of the knowledge that I have about where this stands, at least in terms of the interchange off ramp and how it applies to this subdivision.
All right, thank you. Does that answer your question, Ms. Frank?
It does a little bit. There's already a stoplight at Russell. So if I'm not mistaken, Bill Nye is it 1 block south from Russell? So that would be 2 stoplights, just a block in between the two. Am I making that up in my mind? I'm thinking, or is it 2? It would be 2 blocks. So it would be a stoplight and then 2 blocks and then another stoplight. I'm excited that there would be another stoplight in that area. I think it's needed. I'm just like wondering about the positioning.
Mr. Taney, is it 2 blocks or 3 blocks?
Mayor and council, so correct, there's a stoplight at Russell Street, and then actually it's about 3 blocks south is where Bill Nye Avenue would come in onto 3rd Street. The position of the traffic signal there was in coordination with YDOT as well. So they agree with the positioning and that being the right location for a traffic light. The reason for that is it provides for what they call spacing between the actual interchange off-ramp area and where this light will be located, which is at Bill Nye Avenue. So.
All right, Councilor Schuster, did you have more information?
The only information I have, and I can't remember the name of the street, but there is a current name on the street that will be turned into Bill Nye. But I look at my map here and it does not give the name of the current street. It just says it'll be the future Bill Nye onto there, but there is a street name that this is currently at. But he's right, it is 3 blocks from Russell, and it's approximately probably 3 blocks from the interstate, both directions. It kind of sits right in the middle. It was between the gun shop and the tack, the Western leather tack place, but I can't remember the name of the street, and it's not listed on my map here.
Mayor and council, the street is Palmer Drive is what it was.
Yes, Palmer. Thank you.
You know, Bill Nye has so many.
The future name.
Bill Nye will eventually be Bill Nye, but right now it's 3 or 4 different connecting streets, and we're trying to get all that so that it's easier to understand. Ms. Frank, anything else you have any questions about?
I don't, but I thank you very much for going into detail on that for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else from the public would like to ask questions or comments regarding the 3rd Street Partners preliminary plat? Yes, Nancy Sindelar, go ahead.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council. I'm just wondering if anything has been done with this new development and connecting it to the Greenbelt plan, because I believe the Greenbelt plan comes down Spring Creek, along the creek there, which would be Spring Creek Drive and various named streets as it does that. Thank you.
Mayor and council, technically this plat, the 3rd Street Partners preliminary plat, actually doesn't create any of those connections. All of those were created during the Paledna Edition preliminary plat and final plat process. It includes 2 main components. There's a 10-foot pathway that's located along the north side of Bill Nye Avenue, as well as a greenbelt connection that follows essentially the north side of the Spring Creek Channel that will create the extension of a pathway along the Spring Creek Channel. Basically, I'm going to say from 5th Street and Spring Creek Drive down to 3rd Street. So.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure that kids on their bikes can get across 3rd Street safely.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, council, any comments from the council regarding this preliminary plat before we vote? Seeing none, City Clerk, would you take us through the roll call on this item number 11?
Schuster,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Stelter,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
McKinney, absent, Gabriel,
Yes.
sorry, Shumway.
Yes.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Item number 11, Third Street Partners preliminary plat has passed. We now go to item number 12, Councilor Pierce.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve Resolution 2020-64, transferring unencumbered and unexpended appropriations balances from one fund to another and amending appropriations for the fiscal year 2018 through 2020 biennial budget of the city of Laramie, Wyoming, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Second.
Okay, that has been moved and seconded by Councilor Schuster. And I believe our Deputy Administrative Service Director, Jennifer Wade, is here to introduce this to us.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Councilors. The first budget amendment before you this evening for consideration is what I think of in my mind as our normal year-end adjustment. Now, what that means is as we are closing out our fiscal year end, which ends on June 30th, we also are looking at our budget for any final adjustments that need to be made for the previous fiscal year. And so that's what I mean when I say our normal year-end amendment. You typically will see this amendment from us sometime in October or November, depending on our progress with fiscal year end. This year, our year-end amendment totals $1,895,946. Now, please don't let that amount deter you. Most of it is actually an adjustment to our self-insurance fund based on medical claims, and I'll explain that to you a little bit more. That's our one item that's a little bit bigger than normal, but we will talk about that later. Now, at the fund level in governmental funds, we're recommending an adjustment of $543,275. However, only $115,405 of that has not already been approved by the City Council. For enterprise funds, our business type funds, we're recommending an adjustment of $179,500, of which $97,000 has not already been approved. And finally, we're recommending an adjustment of $1,173,171 to our internal service fund. What I'll do tonight is highlight for you the items you have not already approved through council action, and then I'll open it up for questions. In the general fund, we're recommending one adjustment to increase budget for the purchase of a squad car that was damaged in duty. That adjustment is for $43,330, and it's partially offset by insurance claim revenue for around $15,000. That was an older unit, which explains why the insurance claim revenue does not fully offset the replacement cost of the new patrol car. Additionally, we're recommending an adjustment you haven't seen for our E911 fund for $55,000. This adjustment is related to the timing of billing on some of the major maintenance agreements in that fund. Specifically, in fiscal year 2020, we received 2 years worth of billing on our Motorola contract. And so we have a need to adjust one of our accounts by $55,000. In the Parks and Rec Development Fund, we're recommending an adjustment of $17,075, all of which is offset by recreation mill revenue. This amendment is to simply move projects around between fiscal years. We have a missed re-budget from fiscal year 19 for $7,130 that we need to get cleaned up, as well as a project for $9,945 that was initially approved for fiscal year 21, but that the department was able to get started a little bit earlier. And so we want to move that appropriation back a fiscal year to accommodate that earlier spending. The last adjustments that you haven't seen are in the solid waste fund. There is a $39,500 adjustment recommended for equipment rental costs related to our large snow event in June. We needed to rent some equipment in order to grind up some branches and all the broken trees. We do not have EMA money available to offset that, but it was an additional expenditure incurred that we need to amend for. And finally, in our recycling division in solid waste, we're recommending a $57,500 amendment to reflect the increased hauling fees for our recycling associated with the declining value of recycling worldwide. And this is a phenomenon I think the council are fairly familiar with, and we're adjusting this account to reflect the increased cost associated with that function. And then finally, in the self-insurance fund, as you know, we have self-funded health insurance. Some years our claims are higher than others, depending on the health events of the plan's members. And this was a year where our medical claims were higher than budgeted, and we need to have this adjustment for $1,173,171. However, in years where our medical claims are higher, there is often stop-loss revenue available to offset. This year, that amount is $926,025. And so it's not a full offset, but you'll see it does offset a lot of that increase in claim cost. At this time, I'd love to open it up for any questions that you all may have.
Thank you. Very good review. Council, any questions you have regarding this budget amendment? Councilor Harrington?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just a quick question. The new squad car being purchased in the police administration portion of this, as we're purchasing these new squad cars, are we taking into account the carbon neutral goals that council passed earlier this year, what feels like 100 years ago, but was just a few months ago, I suppose?
I don't know in relation to the specific unit, because this may have occurred before, because this is a 2020 cleanup amendment, but in the future, yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mayor and Council Member Harrington, we're actually went out to bid for looking at the two new squad cars that actually just came through today. I think we're looking at getting hybrids for the police department, but this was for last year, so it was not dealt with. We budgeted though for 21.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Malia.
Other questions for Councilor Stalder?
Thank you, Mayor. I had two questions. The first one was, why did we get 2 years of billing from Motorola for the E911 services in 1 year? And will that be offset next year or last year? And then I can ask my other question or wait.
Let's start with that one.
Honorable Mayor, through you, we actually, Councilor Stalder, were not billed the previous year, and so we did confirm, of course, that that was not paid the prior year. And as to the reason that Motorola's billing was delayed, I can't speak to that, but we did confirm that we didn't somehow double pay.
Awesome, thank you. And then my other question about the self-health insurance is, how much of that is related to COVID-19, and is there any that could be of that remaining that could be offset by CARES Act funding?
Honorable Mayor, through you, these are, as far as I'm aware, this is not related to COVID-19. This is just standard employee medical claims. Leah, do you have anything to add to that?
Mayor and Councilor Stalder, through you, Mayor, basically most of these claims, especially if they're over, are major claims. We had major people over $100,000 with major medical, and that's when the stop loss kicks in, is when it's over 100,000. So most of this, a lot of the claims were due to major issues with people on our plan.
Thank you.
Councilor Schuster?
On the Motorola, will that be coming out of the E911 fund, or will that be coming out of a city fund?
Honorable Mayor, through you, it was an expense of the E911 fund.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Jennifer. And hang around, because there may be questions from the public. Any questions from the public regarding this budget amendment or comments? Any comments from the council before we vote? City Clerk, would you do roll call?
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Stalder,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
McKinney, absent. Schuster,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
All right, that first budget amendment then passes. Now we go to the next item, which is item number 13. Councilor Pierce.
Hey, I move to approve Resolution 2020-65, transferring unencumbered and unexpended appropriations balances from one fund to another and amending appropriations for the fiscal year 2018-2020 biennium budget of the City of Laramie, Wyoming, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Is there a second? Second from Councilor Schuster. Again, this is for Jennifer Wade. Would you take us through this?
Of course. Honorable Mayor, City Councilors, the second budget amendment before you this evening is a budget adjustment to fiscal year 2020 for COVID-19 emergency expenditures. We have prepared this budget amendment as a way to increase transparency about those emergency expenditures. None of these expenditures, in fact, caused expenditures to exceed appropriations for the fiscal year. But we wanted to make sure we were being upfront about the emergency expenditures that we're making and amending the budget accordingly. I should note that all of these expenditures are actually offset by CARES Act funding. And the recommended adjustment to the budget is $124,506. These expenditures ranged in type from personal protective equipment, sanitation items, the implementation of telework and alternate service delivery methods, facility closure costs, facility safety modifications, wastewater system testing. And so this really is a great dump of the emergency expenditures that were incurred by the city between March, during that first phase of response, and the end of June. Now we'll be presenting another amendment for your consideration in January that wraps up the final amount of those emergency expenditures, especially as we are finalizing our CRG reimbursements through the SLIB office. Now for this budget adjustment in particular, $120,465 relates to governmental funds. Most of that is in the general fund across divisions. And in the enterprise funds, the recommended adjustment is for $4,041. At the highest level, that's what this amendment is all about. And at this time, I would be happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Questions from council? Questions from the public or comments from the public? Comments from the council? City Clerk, would you do roll call?
McKinney, absent. Schuster,
Yes.
Stalder,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. That budget amendment then passes also. Now, Councilor Pierce, would you do item number 14?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve Resolution 2020-66, transferring unencumbered and unexpended appropriation balances from one fund to another and amending appropriations for fiscal year 2020-2021 annual budget of the city of Laramie, Wyoming, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded by, was that Councilor Doherty?
Yes.
Councilor Doherty. Jennifer.
And Honorable Mayor, City Councilors, the final budget amendment for your consideration this evening is our first administrative adjustment to fiscal year 2021. We're recommending a total adjustment of $881,436 to the fiscal year 2021 budget. And of this amount, you have not approved $399,032. I'll focus again on these not already approved amounts. What is a little bit unique about this amendment is there are multiple administrative budget errors that we are correcting. What an administrative budget error means to us is that in the development of a manual budget forecast, someone forgot to pick up a number and load it into the budget. And in my 10 years of working here, we officially have more errors than I have ever seen. But we also we're just living through a pandemic. And I think people were incredibly stressed during the March and April time period. And we just made more errors in our manual processes than is normal for us. And so we ask for a good sense of humor about this, and we do want to apologize for the clutter that this creates. But I also want to commend my staff for keeping up their output and working through some very challenging times, which they continue to do so. I will point out these administrative budget corrections to you as we move forward. In the governmental funds, we're recommending an adjustment of $730,560. $298,156 has not been approved by the council already. In our enterprise funds, we're recommending an adjustment of $150,876, and you have not approved $100,876 already. Starting with the general fund. In the city manager's office, we are recommending a budget decrease of $5,000 because we put $5,000 in the wrong division when we created the budget. That should have gone in the city attorney's division. And the next amendment that you see that has not already been approved is actually a transfer of that spending authority to the correct division. So there's no impact to spending, it's just moving it to the right place for that adjustment. The next new item is a $10,000 budget adjustment because we omitted loading one particular item, one of our debt obligations for $10,000 in general accounts, and we need to get that amount added into the budget. In the police administration division, we're recommending a $4,000 increase because we have a small cost overrun on our already budgeted mobile computer replacement project, and we just need to get about $4,000 more into that project. In fire EMS, we have the largest recommended adjustment for the general fund of $100,000. And this is to remedy an existing safety issue in the cots that we have, our ambulance cots, and get them replaced with cots that have the safety features that the EMS division chief and fire chief feel are necessary. This $100,000 expenditure is offset entirely by restricted impact fees. The next adjustment you haven't seen is an adjustment to the E911 fund. This adjustment is for $19,625, and it relates to expenditures that we didn't anticipate for the CAD RMS software replacement project. $12,125 is to upgrade our digital ticketing software to allow it to interface with the new software product, and there's $7,500 that's necessary in order to pay for some one-time setup and installation charges for the software project. In our SPT fund, we're recommending a total budget increase of $231,607. Most of that you have actually already approved. However, there are two new projects that are included in this request that I'd like to point out for you this evening. The Parks and Rec Director and Assistant City Manager Todd Fieser have asked for a $12,000 project for the Grand Avenue Shared Use Path Connections. And this project is intended to create a safe signalized crossing for residents using a shared use path from Imperial Heights. Additionally, he has asked for a $45,000 increase for the Aragon softball field improvements project to make sure that these fields are edged and graded and some existing safety issues with the backstop fences are addressed. In the water fund, there is an administrative budget correction because we left one debt obligation out of our budget for $75,876. And finally, the last budget adjustment that you haven't seen is in the solid waste fund. This is $25,000 to reflect the increased hauling fees associated with the declining value of recycling. And so when we saw the need for the budget amendment in fiscal year 20, we looked forward in 21 to see if there were any adjustments necessary, talked to the solid waste division manager and the public works director, and we agreed that this $25,000 adjustment is probably necessary at this point. At this time, I'd like to open it up for questions.
Thank you.
Pat Gabriel and Brian Harrington.
Okay, Pat Gabriel, did you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Jen, I was just curious about, with a city budget as massive as ours, there's a lot of budget adjustments that have to be made. Can you tell me about how the process works? Does somebody say, oh, wait just a minute here, this should be, and how is that formulated to get corrected?
Honorable Mayor, through you, Councilor Gabriel, are you asking about the processes, say, that maybe are involved in developing the city's debt budget or the various components of our budgets?
No, the adjustments you talked about in March and April, that you discovered some adjustments had to be made.
So in March and April, my team actually is compiling many of the estimates that are used in what we would call our centrally budgeted accounts. And that's everything from depreciation in the enterprise funds to debt service to the payroll forecast to the operating base budgets. And so my team actually compiles the figures for most of the city's budget. And we incorporate into that the departmental request, and then it culminates in the budget book that you all see. Now, most of these processes are actually manual. They're by hand. And so during times when people are under stress, like during a pandemic, what we find, especially after the fact, we'll often find something that maybe got missed. And we'll find it in the course of year-end review, Councilor Gabriel, or we'll find it when we maybe go to make a debt payment and someone will say, oh, goodness, I forgot about this. And that's how these adjustments come to light. And by the time we get to about maybe October or November and are through our year-end processes, we typically have dredged up the things that we maybe didn't miss, aside from maybe some project rebudgets that we aren't aware of at that point. But those centralized matters are things that we typically can see in the first quarter if we get them incorrect. Does that answer your question?
You bet. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question that I think will probably be aimed at the assistant city manager. I'm curious if I could get a little more info on the Grand Avenue shared use path crossing, as far as where the location is, and then what that looks like in practice.
Honorable Mayor Todd Feaser.
Go ahead, Todd.
The Grand Avenue path is on the northeast side of Grand Avenue, and the majority of the portion of the path is being constructed by the Laramie Valley Chapel with a subdivision development that they have going on. The portion that we're working on is the connection to Vista and the crossing at the already signalized crosswalk at Vista.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Other questions? Councilor Stalder.
Thank you, Mayor. There was one thing that I saw in here that you didn't cover as a new expenditure, which was the $17,600 to the IT and $17,600 administrative budget area to the broadband project. And I was just wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about those. I remember there were three funds that were covered, or three contracts. So that's a pretty significant error, I think about 33%, and that was pre-pandemic. So I just was wondering if you could let me know about those overages and if that's going to be a yearly cost or just a one-time cost.
Honorable Mayor, through you, the council approved the contract that resulted in the $17,600 increase in September 17th of 2019. And at that, last year, these amounts were added to the fiscal year 20 budget. But during the fiscal year 2021 budget, these amounts were not added during our manual process to fiscal year 2021. But because the council had already approved the expenditure through the contract, I consider these to be a not new adjustment and the correction of an administrative error. So I apologize that I didn't highlight those as new items, but it's because the contract had already been approved. And so they should have just been rolled into the base budget in fiscal year 2021.
Okay.
Is that everything, Councillor Stalder?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Other questions from council? Anything from the public? Comments from the council?
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, Mr. Glass, go ahead.
Honorable Mayor Shumway, members of council, I just wanted to make an additional comment on the item that Councillor Stalder pointed out. First of all, not only did staff make an error in failing to account for the broadband contract, but the amounts in this current amendment are wrong. It's not $17,200 times 2. If you take a look at the contract that the no bid contract that the city, I think, unwisely signed with Visionary, it's $17,200 times 3. And this is an annual expense. It will reoccur every year when the city could, in fact, have solved this problem for less than 1 year's expenditure all at once and not had to pay this every year. It also doesn't include the USF fees, which need to be paid in association with the contract. And so it's wrong in that way also. I recommend that you not approve this until you correct those errors. Thank you.
Honorable Mayor, through you, I'd like to address at least the budget matter being brought up here. And we put the third element in the fund where it was supposed to be budgeted. So we only omitted 2 out of the 3. And that's why you only see 2 amendments before you this evening for consideration. And so the third has already been loaded into the fiscal year 2021 budget.
Thank you. Council, any comments that you have? Okay, on this third budget amendment, then let's have roll call. City Clerk?
Harrington,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
McKinney. Absent, O'Doherty.
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Stalder,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Item 14, which is the third budget amendment, has passed. Now we go to item number 15. Councillor Harrington.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to award the bid for the return activated sludge pump station upgrade project to Velocity Constructors, Inglewood, Colorado, in the amount of $244,616, along with a contingency of $24,461.60, for a total amount not to exceed $269,077.60, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by Councilor Pierce. Mr. Webb.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, the return activated sludge pumps, we call them RAS pumps for short, were installed as part of the original plant about 25 years ago. There's 5 pumps in total. They're reaching the end of their useful life. They are an integral part of the wastewater treatment plant. Without them, we cannot operate. We went out for a contract for design, and you awarded that back in February 2020 for the pump design, pump selection, pump revisions, and electrical system updating. The design was completed and we went out to bid per state statute. Bids were publicly opened by the city clerk on October 20th. We received 5 bids. The low bid was Velocity Constructors. Staff has reviewed the bid documents for completeness and is recommending bid award and contract signing for Velocity Constructors.
Thank you. Questions from council? Okay. Who has their hand up? I don't see anyone. Anyone from the public regarding this sludge pump contract? Comments from the council? City Clerk, could we have roll call?
Doherty.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
We can't hear you, Nancy, or at least I can't.
Can't hear me?
No.
There you are.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Schuster.
Schuster voting on the sludge pump?
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Stalder.
Yes.
McKinney. Absent. Harrington.
McKinney?
Yes.
McKinney is present. Did you want to vote on this, Councilor McKinney?
No, go ahead.
Purchase of sludge pump?
Purchase sludge pump?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, his vote is yes. Go ahead, City Clerk.
So that was a yes for Harrington, a yes for McKinney. Gabriel.
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 noes, Your Honor.
Okay, all right, that resolution, or that bid award then passes. Now we go to the next item, which is item number 16, Councilor Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve amendment number 1 to the return activated sludge pump station upgrades professional service agreement with HDR Engineering to conduct construction services in the amount of $37,725 and with a contingency of $3,772.50 for a total amount of $41,495.50, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign.
Second.
Been moved and seconded by Councilor Schuster. Mr. Webb.
Honorable Mayor, City Council. So HDR Engineering was awarded the design back in February 2020 for the RAS pumps. You just approved the construction for that project. And so this is to amend HDR Engineering's contract so that they can proceed with the construction management and construction administration of the project. With that, I'll take any questions if you have them.
Questions from the council? Questions from the public? Or comments from the public? Comments from the council before we vote? City Clerk, could we have the vote?
Stalder,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
Thank you. That professional service agreement amendment then has been approved. We now go to number 17, Councilor Stalder.
All right, I move to approve Resolution 2020-67 for approving the distribution and publication of a notice of intention to issue and sell general obligations bonds, Series 2020, to be issued by the City of Laramie in the principal amount not to exceed $5,145,000 and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Second.
Okay, that motion has been made and seconded by Councilor Schuster. Chief Operating Officer Brown will introduce this to us.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and council members. If you remember back in August of 2018, when we passed the SPT tax, we had in the tax bonding numbers with $9,500,000. The bonding at the time, our general obligation bonds, are limited to our assessed valuation at the time. So we can bond up to $9,500,000 in project cost. The actual tax also had the interest cost in those projects also. We're now at the point where we feel that bonding would be a good timing, because when you bond, you have to spend the monies within 3 years. You have trustees and things that you have to apply for. So we think this is a good time to bond. We're bonding the fire training tower. At this point, the fire chief has, and the assistant city manager has been working on that. They're getting a total price. The design is done, so we can start bonding that project and having the money for that project. It's over $3 million. And the other projects that we're bonding is street projects, so that we can kind of get on, because we've really ramped up our game in the last year, especially in the streets. So those are the two items we're bonding. When this goes through, right now, this is just a resolution to enter an intent to bond. We have to do notice to the public, and we'll be coming back with the actual bonds in December of what the rates are and what we got for the rates. And so in December, we'll be coming back for that for approval, and then we'll have to close on the bonds and actually do the bonds by the end of December. So if you have questions about the process, I have here tonight Todd Bishop, who is the financial manager who's going to be selling the bonds and making the deal, and I also have Rick Thompson, who's the bond attorney. So if Todd, if you'd like to say anything now about the deals and what we're doing.
I'd be happy to, Malia. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. My name is Todd Bishop with Kaiser Wealth Management. What you see before you is a process that, as Malia stated, we began clear back in 2018 when voters passed the 1% specific purpose tax. And the next step in this process, of course, the passage of this resolution of intent calling for the issuance and sale of these bonds. We, given passage of this resolution this evening, we will then publish this resolution in the newspaper. It'll be published 3 different times. During this publication process, we'll also be sending out to local banks and banks across the state what we call a private placement memorandum. And this memorandum will describe to these investors exactly what the city is doing with these bond proceeds, how the bonds will be repaid, and just really to get some interest from them as to whether or not they would like to participate and actually be a purchaser of these bonds. We will accept bids back from these interested institutions, and we will have those bids available for your consideration at the next council meeting, at which time you can decide whether to proceed or not with the actual issuance of that debt. So you'll get to come back, see what the final rates are, who those investors would be before you would issue them, and they would be outstanding. Given your approval at that next council meeting, we would then make arrangements for the closing of the transaction, and those bond proceeds would be available to the city for construction of those projects on or before the end of this calendar year.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop.
And maybe Rick might want to say something. Rick Thompson.
Mr. Thompson, did you have anything you wanted to cover with the council?
No, thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. This is Rick Thompson, Hathaway and Coons, serving as your bond counsel. I'm available here for any questions. I think the summary that Todd Bishop gave was accurate and fully explained the process. If you have any questions, I am the drafter of the resolution and the notice of intent that will be published in the newspaper and circulated to investors. So if you have any questions about those documents, I would be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, if there's any questions for either Mr. Bishop, Mr. Thompson, or Malia Brown, go ahead. Councilor Harrington?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I suspect this will be aimed at the Chief Operating Officer, but if it's not, anybody else feel free to hop in. I have a constituent that has often mentioned when we do bond projects that they would like to participate in the purchase of those bonds. Could you explain why that is not a direction that we're moving as a city for those sort of like private party purchases?
I think I'll let Todd answer that.
Sure.
Just because
sure, I'll take a roll at that one. Honorable Mayor, through you, the process to which to make a municipal bonds available to an individual to purchase is one where you have to create a document. It's called a preliminary official statement. And that disclosure document is a document that's prepared by bond counsel, and it's an expensive document to create. It's about $25,000 to $30,000 disclosure document that essentially describes all of the potential risks that are associated with the purchase and sale of bonds to an individual or an investor. And in addition to that, when you do some type of a public offering like that to make those available for individuals, oftentimes we're required to go get a rating. So a rating on a $5 million transaction probably be about between $10,000 to $12,000 for that additional expense. In addition to that expense, when you do a public offering, you put additional onus on the city to provide annual disclosure requirements. So those disclosure requirements require the city to send information off to the repositories, make them aware of any changes in your financial situation, budget amendments, so on and so forth. So I guess that's a long-winded answer, Mr. Harrington, that there's some additional expense that goes in with making those available to an individual. And what I have found is that additional expense does not always equate to a lower net interest cost to the city itself. We have successfully offered bonds in this private placement format with sophisticated investors, i.e. local area banks.
And we're able to get rates that are equal to or lower than the market rates that are out there without incurring that additional expense. The fact of the matter is, when we have made these public offerings or made them so individuals can buy them, there is such a small handful of individuals that actually go out and make those purchases. So you're creating some additional expense for a very elite few individuals who have the ability to purchase a tax-exempt municipal bond.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask a follow-up?
Go ahead, Councilor Harrington.
Thank you. Mr. Bishop, is it, so I think in this case, maybe there is a, maybe I should have, this question may be stupid, I guess is the only way to say it. I think the constituent that I mentioned was interested in more purchasing like shares in this like sort of larger, like I would assume, I don't know anything about their financial picture, but I don't get the impression that they would be looking at like a $5 million bonds purchase. Is that even something that exists as far as average residents being able to purchase portions of bonds?
Well, if there was a situation where what we would call them a sophisticated investor, and that would be someone with a net worth of in excess of $2 million and annual net revenue of, I believe it's $250,000 annually, that individual may qualify to be a purchaser in this instance. And if that individual met those qualifications, there's no reason why I would not accept or look at a bid from them in this type of a situation.
But there's no purchase in part on a bond like this. Like, if somebody wanted to purchase, say, $50,000 worth of this municipal bonds. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I ask another follow-up.
That's fine, go ahead.
No, Mr. Mayor, through you, yes, I've tried to set this up in a true bidding type format. So if you were to look at that notice, you'll see that there's actual individual maturities of bonds maturing beginning in June 15th of 2021 through and including December 15th of 2031. So I'm going to set this up on a bidding format so a bank can bid on each of those individual maturities. They would give me an interest rate at which they would agree to purchase those. And they could only bid on, say, the first maturity of $200,000, or they could choose to bid on the entire amount. I do not want to discourage anyone from bidding, no matter how small or large that institution may be. And this allows the city to select the actual best interest rate on each one of those maturities. So you theoretically could end up with a different institution on all of those maturities, arguably. So no, I'm not discouraging smaller bids. Although you'll notice that the smallest maturity we have on there is a $200,000 maturity.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. That answers it well. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Gabriel.
Thank you, Mayor. Good to see you, Todd. We go back a few years with bonds. And I just was curious. Can you tell us a little bit about the bond market at this point? When you take a look at the COVID world, does that really have anything to do with it? Could you comment on that?
Well, how about a comment just on interest rates in general? I don't think it's a huge secret, and I won't be sharing any earth-shattering news by letting everybody know that interest rates are very, very low right now. So I would anticipate that the city is going to receive what I would consider are very attractive bids back when we send out this information to to the area markets. You know, when COVID first hit our markets, I was very concerned that we would have a problem getting banks and investors interested in making those types of commitments, given the uncertainty of the world that we're in right now. That has not been the case. We've still seen an active bond market. Even in Wyoming, there's been some activity here in the last 30, 45 days. And so I think remain optimistic that we'll receive some good bids back and interest when we send this information out.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Todd.
Pierce, thank you, Vice Mayor Gabriel. Councilor Pierce.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This question might be more for city staff. I recall a conversation, and I think we need to check if we may have promised or implied during this process in 2018 that a bond purchase option to our citizens here in Laramie was going to be available. And I really think we need to check to make sure that that we didn't do that. I might be remembering wrong. I mean, I think that's entirely possible as well, but I think it would be good if we went back and looked at some of our previous conversations on this topic, because I am recalling conversations, you know, around this topic, you know, with the potential ability to have our citizens be able to do some purchasing. So I think we need to visit this a little more. I don't know. I'm sensing a bit of a red flag here.
Mayor, what I recall is that you questioned that you would like us to look into it. And I think at the time I said this is not something that to go out for a public offering, and I think I even brought back stuff from the school district, but I don't remember exactly, and maybe Todd can remember that also. But to do a public offering means you're not doing it at local banks. It means that you're bidding everywhere. Any bank, any person can go do it. It means I have to go stop and do a Standard & Poor. You have to go through Standard & Poor's. You have to have them go look at you have to do financials. You have to do all sorts of things to have a bond. And I believe, Todd, you can tell me, but it's not you can't do $200, $300. It has to be $5,000 that you're offering the public. So when we went and looked at the school district, I believe they only had 5 people on that $280 million bond. And so when we looked at it and researched it, we just did not feel that the cost, the time, I'll tell you the time, I did a Standard & Poor offering several years ago, and I spent days with Standard & Poor's, and every year you have to give them updates on your financials. They have to rate your bonds. It's a rating. They have to rate it. It's a huge process for the cost, time, and everything for this one's a lot lower, and having $5,000, having the public to go out, I think I came back and said, I don't believe we should be doing this. I don't think it's a cost-effective approach. And what we're doing is instilling this into our local community, who then can invest, our local bankers. And that's where, that's the recommendation I think we should go with.
Thank you. Councilor Pierce, does that answer your question?
At this time, I don't have a follow-up, but I may later. Let's perhaps hear from Todd, or maybe Councilor Stalder might have a follow-up as well.
Todd, I'm not sure if you had anything, but I believe I recall you saying that this would be offered statewide. So I just wanted to make sure that I heard that correctly after hearing this would be invested at local banks. And then at some point, will we get a statement of who purchased these bonds, or would that be something that we have to request?
Honorable Mayor, through you. So the information that we are going to send out, this private placement memorandum, this will go out to all of the institutions in Albany County, as well as a select few from around the state. And they will review that information. If they have questions, they'll most likely call myself or they'll contact Malia. And then they're going to fill out what we call a subscription form. And it's essentially a bid form that they will write down the interest rates at which they would be willing to purchase those bonds. They'll send that bid back to us by December 7th, and we'll compile that information for City Council. And so you'll actually be able to look at all of the bids that come back. So you'll know prior to any approval of any authorization of issuing those bonds, who is going to end up with them. And, you know, you'll have a tabulation of all of the bids, and then I'll provide you with a recommendation, which is typically the lowest, you know, awarding the lowest interest rates to whomever the best bids come from.
Thank you. Mayor, could I just ask one follow-up question to that?
Go ahead, Councilor Stalder.
Thank you. When you said a select few statewide agencies, I mean, obviously, I think all of us would like to see this stay in Laramie. Can you tell me like which selected agencies or what the process for that looks like?
I'd be happy to. Having, you know, in my business, in the municipal advisory business, I'm aware of a lot of the banking institutions that are active participants in the purchasing of municipal bonds. So when I say a select few, it really doesn't provide a lot of benefit to send it out to every banking institution in the state when not every banking institution in the state is an active purchaser of tax-exempt municipal bonds. For example, an institution that banks in Cook County, Wyoming, you're not in the same service area in Albany County, so they're most likely not interested in participating in this particular issue. So I guess that's just based upon my 30 years experience in the industry. We have a pretty good idea of who's active in buying these bonds.
Thank you.
And I would be happy to share that list with council prior to its being sent out.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from council with questions? Councilor Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think what I heard Malia say is that if you all, before I was on city council, had voted to start doing bonds directly to the public, that she would remember that because it's such an onerous process. I think that's what I heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Schuster.
I guess I would like to take a shot at this. So if I hear this all right, we're going to go out to Albany County financial institutions. So if a person really wanted to invest in this, they should contact their financial institution that they're dealing with saying, if you get some of these bonds from the city, I would like to invest into the bank as a participant in this. And that way it would not encumber Malia's time or other people's times, that they would push their financial institution that if they have enough, because he talked about the minimum being 200,000, so it's going to be somebody that's got some financial clout in a bank too, that would be their best way to go.
Mr. Bishop, is this the process that happens typically?
Well, Honorable Mayor, through you, the banks that will end up purchasing these, you know, I don't know. I can't speak to their internal processes, what they decide to do once they have those internally. I don't believe, though, that they will be necessarily reallocating those to their individual customers. I don't believe that this process would facilitate that. I believe this is truly a buy and hold situation where if a local bank were to buy the first 5 or 6 maturities, they're probably buying that for their own portfolio and would keep that internally.
Thank you.
Thank you. Malia Brown?
Yes, I think that the banks are here to help their financial institution, and that these are there to help them. Then in turn, they offer what they're offering to the public. I think that's what these are for.
Councilor Doherty?
So I think what I'm hearing is, so if I get a CD at a local bank, a certificate of deposit, the interest that the bank earns is things like this, but it's not like they earmark for certain investors what goes to whom. Thank you for this. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on the council? Any questions or comments from the public?
Maximus Basari.
Maximus, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For whatever it's worth, an individual investor can buy municipal bonds. Usually financial institutions bundle them and sell them into secondary markets. And there are ETFs, exchange traded funds, and the subject matter experts probably can expound on this. And individual investors can buy them. There's many companies that offer them, like Vanguard, Invesco, PIMCO, you name it. And I think the question would be to ask the financial institution which instrument these were bundled in the secondary market. So for the constituents that are interested, they can find this out and buy those specific ETFs, which is way more cost efficient to own rather than the process that is being described here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public? Any comments from the council before we vote? City Clerk, would you do roll call?
Harrington.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes.
O'Doherty.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Brewster.
Yes.
Stalder.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 noes, Your Honor.
All right. That resolution has passed, and I see that again in December in a different form. Item number 18, Councilor Doherty.
I move to approve on second reading original ordinance 2009, amending chapter 10.08 of the Laramie Municipal Code related to the official traffic commission.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by Councilor Harrington.
Well, Mayor, I'll introduce it, though. This is a guest that needs little introduction. The proposed revised ordinance has been amended in both of your last regular meetings, and those amendments stand before you now. As it stands, the Traffic Commission has expanded to 8 members with 1 non-voting city staff and 7 citizen members, 1 being an engineer. It continues to direct that the new Traffic Commission be operated under bylaws approved by you, which will be brought to you through a resolution at your next regular meeting. And it continues to outline the role of the commission with staff and council.
Councilor Doherty.
Mr. Mayor, I want to propose an amendment because I feel like we didn't really make it that clear last time. And so I sent this proposed amendment to the clerk and to the council in their email. We lost the information about expertise in transportation. So I would propose that we strike the line 1 Laramie resident engineer and 6, and then just change it to add the word 7 to that last bullet point, and then append with preference for 1 member given to an applicant holding a professional engineering license with expertise in transportation. And in this way, that's my amendment. Do I?
Second.
Okay. And now, so my purpose, may I speak?
Could we get a second on your amendment before we start?
Stalder did.
Okay.
Second.
All right, so it's been moved. The amendment has been moved and seconded by Councilor Stalder. Go ahead, Councilor Doherty.
So my concern was if we didn't happen to have a PE applying, that we would be stuck. And also that, so that's why we were getting rid of the PE part in that second bullet. But since the third bullet addresses experience in engineering, I thought I could just clean it up with saying this last phrase, with preference for 1 member given to an applicant holding a professional engineering license with expertise in transportation. I think it captures what we initially had in there, but streamlines it. And the council will be choosing members anyway. And so if someone has a professional engineer license, then they, at least 1 would get preference. Thank you.
Thank you. On the amendment, any other questions from the council? Anything from the public on the proposed amendment? Comments from the council on this proposed amendment before we vote on the amendment? City Clerk, would you do roll call?
Doherty.
Yes.
Stalder.
Yes.
Harrington.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes.
His vote was yes.
Thank you. Pierce.
Yes.
Schuster.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
Okay, so we'll return to the ordinance as amended. Any comments, questions from the council on the ordinance as it's been amended? Councilor Stalder.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to address the public comments that brought up the bylaws. And I had the same question earlier this week and sent an email. I guess I don't understand process of approving one thing before the other. And I did ask the city attorney where those bylaws were, and it was something we went over in February. So that's a lot of, I guess, digging to kind of try and figure out where that is, and maybe just an explanation of why the two things aren't approved together at the same time.
I'm happy to speak to that, Your Honor, if you want me to.
Go ahead, city attorney.
Yeah, it was gone over in February and has been publicized since. In February, it was a joint work session with the Traffic Commission, with those members who came in, had their comments, were generally very positive on those bylaws. But in any event, the reason I thought we should do it this way, because these are two separate things, entirely separate. One is permanent, one is ephemeral. All that an ordinance does is restructure, all that this ordinance does, as amended, is restructure the membership and outline the responsibilities of the Traffic Commission. That's it. And says that it will be operated according to bylaws. Those bylaws then come to you on third reading, and you may like them, not like them, amend them, but you have time to do that. But remember the point of the ordinance, at least as I saw it, and I think as council discussed it, was we had a 100-year-old ordinance for a traffic commission. So this ordinance, all it does is update it as to membership and responsibilities. And so at the end of that, then you can start to look at the bylaws. Those bylaws might come back in front of you every 2 months, every 6 months, every 8 months. They can change on one resolution. So the Traffic Commission ordinance is not its bylaws. It's setting up a modern, in my view, setting up a modern Traffic Commission with a modern makeup of people who are on it, along with a modern description of what it does. And that's it. So that was, I mean, that's a long way of sort of disclosing my thought process on why we're doing it this way. Whether I don't know that that's correct or not, but that was the thought process.
Anyone else on council with questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Weaver.
Thank you very much. I wanted to follow up on this line of questioning as well, and I appreciate the previous question and the answer. I think it's a reasonable answer. I think what's generated some concern and confusion is thinking back to the first time the council reviewed this in the work session. It was done at the same time. Both the ordinance and the bylaws were initially reviewed at the same time. And at that meeting, although it does seem like it was many years ago, it brought to my attention a number of things in those bylaws that I thought were operationally important. Although I appreciate that the ordinance and the bylaws are separate items, nevertheless, operationally, the bylaws feature a number of important aspects that are going to affect how the Traffic Commission does its business, and in fact outline some important items about what it's tasked with and what is expected of it, that although stem from the ordinance are very, very, very important in terms of how business is going to be done. So I appreciate hearing that we will be seeing those bylaws before the third reading. And I will just communicate this evening that I will be bringing a number of amendments to those bylaws at that meeting. And I do appreciate the efforts of staff. I know a few staff members reached out to communicate a couple of points about that, and I appreciate it. But if the bylaws are the same as those we saw several months ago, then I believe there need to be some changes made, and I'll put those forward before the council at the appropriate time. And I agree with some of the previous questions that were raised. I had them myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Weaver. Other questions from the council? Other amendments? Let's go to the general public. I think Nancy Sindler, you wanted to speak?
Exactly what they said. If you went to trouble, we don't care about city council.
Not right at the moment, the Honorable Mayor.
Okay.
We don't
I'm mostly listening.
Okay, thank you for being here.
To better do their job.
I'm hearing somebody
Sharon,
speak.
you are not muted. Sharon, you are not muted.
Okay, is there someone else in the public that would like to speak?
And so they're home.
Sharon Comby, go ahead.
City council is still in a meeting.
Sharon, you're not muted again if you intend to be.
Sharon Comby, did you want to make a comment?
This is me on.
Okay. Council, any comments you have on the amendment, or on the ordinance as amended? Okay, this is second reading. We're going to have a roll call now on this second reading of the Traffic Commission ordinance. City Clerk, would you please take us through roll call?
Doherty.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Stalder.
No.
Weaver.
No.
Harrington.
Yes.
McKinney.
No.
Yes.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
That's 6 yeses and 3 nos, Your Honor.
Okay, so the second reading passes on to the third reading, and now we have one more item, so rather than take a break, if you want to take a break, we will, Council, or we can just go through to the next item. I don't hear anyone wanting to take a break. So item number 19, Councilor Stalder.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the council move to approve original ordinance 2019, adding section 5.09.050 to the Laramie Municipal Code related to manufacturing and rectifying alcohol on the second reading.
Second.
Second.
Okay, I've got a second from Councilor Schuster, so it's on the floor. City Clerk, did you want to bring us up to date on this before we have questions?
Absolutely, Mayor. The item before you is original ordinance number 2019. The purpose of this ordinance is to bring sections of state statute into local code to allow us as the local licensing authority, you as the council, to be able to receive applications for satellite locations for distilleries and rectifiers. Currently, we have the fee set within our resolution at $100. So what we're doing is we're taking sections from Title 12 of state statute and putting that into municipal code to include the distiller definitions as well as the satellite locations. This, like I said, is just in preparation. If a distiller comes into city limits and requests to set up a satellite location to be able to sell to members of the community, that would allow them to do that. With that, if you have any questions, we kind of went over the process at first reading as far as they go through the TTB first, which is a federal process. Then they go to the state level to obtain their distiller license. And then at that point, they come to the local licensing authority for the satellite location. So with that, Mayor, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Questions for our city clerk? Questions from the public or comments from the public? Okay, back to the council. We had a public hearing on this. I don't believe we had anything in the public hearing either. Any comments from the council before we vote? City clerk, would you take us through the vote?
Harrington,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Brewster,
Yes.
Stelder,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
All right, that item passes. Now we're on to public comments again. Anyone that would like to make public comments, you'll have 3 minutes. If you would like to make public comments, go ahead and unmute or raise your hand and we'll call on you.
Mallory Bond had her hand up.
Mallory, did you want to make public comments? She's muted. I think she was here for the last.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I think that was sort of the clapping emoji for the last item.
I agree. Okay. Anyone from the public that would like to make public comments? Seeing none, we'll close this public comment period and ask the council if there's any future council work session topics that you'd like to introduce at this time.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilor Weaver.
I'm not certain what umbrella this would fit under, but I do think that there might be an interest in some sort of approach or educational program undertaken by the city government to provide some information to the public about some aspects of the city of Laramie's governance structure. I noticed that a lot of questions come up frequently in terms of the unique aspects of the structure that we function under. And that would not necessarily be a work session for the council, although for incoming members it could be. But I wanted to raise this topic and see what interest maybe the other council members had in something along those lines, because I think it might be beneficial. So I'm throwing that out there. Like I said, I do that with some hesitancy because I'm not sure where it fits, and I don't know that we have to answer all of that tonight. But I want folks to think about it, and I want to see if in the upcoming weeks and months, other council members agree with me, and if the staff thinks there might be some benefit to that. So I raise it now because I'm unsure what would be a more appropriate time to raise it, and I'm willing to leave it there for now and maybe engage in future discussions with the council members and staff at a later point in time.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Councilor Weaver. I think that could, depending on the council's wish, we could have this as a presentation in a council meeting, or we could have it as training for council and, you know, maybe have something available on our website, but there's a various number of things that we could do. Let's talk about it and see where that goes. Thank you for that suggestion. Anyone else for future council topics? Councilor Pierce.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm just was supportive of Councilor Weaver's comment, mostly because I think we do have a pretty large misunderstanding related to forms of government at the local level that exists even in the state of Wyoming. I think it can be somewhat confusing for folks who maybe move from one community to another. And I think a basic, I don't know, kind of rundown of statutorily what types of local governments are available to and operate in the state, as well as how our government here in Laramie functions, I think would be well worth the effort and to talk about, as well as probably have available on a webpage like you mentioned. I think that's great. I think education is key to this issue, and I would certainly be willing to help organize a PowerPoint to help folks out if it's desired.
Right, and that could, because they're both televised, it could be as a presentation or as in both a work session or in a city council meeting. Let's follow up on that. Let's get our ideas together and see where it goes. Any other ideas from the council for future council work sessions?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Doherty.
I just want to echo that, but in particular, I think that city budgets, or I don't know if budgets or spending, so people know that we have all these checks on city spending, that we have a finance committee that's another level of oversight, things like that. So I'd like that to be included. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Future council work topics? Councilor Stalder, does your son have something for us? Welcome to City Council. All right, I don't see any other hands, so item number 22, that's Councilor Pierce.
Yeah, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.